Good Friday, everybody. Of course, we call this day Good Friday, but we know that this day is the day that Christ was crucified for the sins of the world. He's crucified on a cross. We have these all over our church, just like many churches, because of the cross that meant shame, we see as beauty for what Christ did on the cross for us. And so Friday morning, they went through their trials. Pilate's handed him over to be crucified. And so they take Jesus to Golgotha, known as the place of the skull. And there he's crucified, a thief on each side of him, a criminal. And he is put in the middle as another criminal. While he's on the cross, people come by, people mock him. People say, well, if he is the Christ, then let him come off the cross and we'll believe. Several things happened during that time. And as we see, he was crucified at the third hour. So it had been about 9 a.m. in the morning. And he's going to stay on the cross till 3, which had been the 9th hour. So he's on the cross for 6 hours. And then he dies. Now, something you need to know about the cross. The cross was basically the Romans had came up with the perfect way to kill someone, to put someone to death. It was excruciating, it took a long time, and it was painful the whole time. So they would put the person on the cross like this. They would drive nails into the wrist, and then they would cross the feet and drive nails to the feet. And what would happen is every time that Jesus or anyone on a cross would need to take a breath, they would have to push themselves up to breathe, and then they would sag back down. Asphyxiation, cardiac arrest would occur, and death would happen. Now, what's amazing is while Christ is on the cross, he doesn't just hang there and die, but he actually does things, says things on the cross, and we'll get to that in just a minute. So 9 a.m. he's put on the cross. People come by, they mock, they just throw obscenities at him, they mock him, and he's there. Something interesting happens though about noon. At about noon, darkness covers the land. But this isn't like any other darkness. And people start to realize that this isn't like any other man. This happens till about 3 o'clock when Jesus breathes his final breath. But like I said, even on the cross, Jesus was still taking care of business. Jesus was still sharing things that need to be shared and taking care of things that need to be taken care of. So the last little bit of this, I want to talk about the 7 statements that Jesus made while upon the cross. When they put him on the cross and the people were walking by and they were mocking him, the first thing we see that Jesus, as he's hanging on the cross, he says to God, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The first thing we see, even on the cross, Jesus' mind was on forgiveness. Even as they nailed him to that cross, as they punished him, as he was hung there dying, he still said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The reason he came was, of course, to offer forgiveness to the world. And it's the first thing he says as he's on the cross. The second thing we see is he says, and he said to him, truly, as I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise. The second thing is they had the thieves on each side of the cross. One mocks, the other mocks, but eventually one keeps mocking, but the other says, hey, hold on, we're here because we deserve it. This guy didn't do anything wrong. And he says to Jesus, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And that's what Jesus said. Today, you're going to be with me in paradise. See, he even loved the criminals that deserved death. And he even offered them salvation. Because that is what we all need. That's why Christ died, so we could be forgiven, so we could have salvation, so we could be with him, in a relationship with him. Thirdly, woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. Jesus took care of his own mother. We know it was John at the cross, and we see that Jesus knew that his mother needed to be taken care of. Now, he had brothers, but none of them were believers at this time, and she ended up staying with John. John looked after her the remainder of his days. But he loved his mother, and he made sure she was taken care of. So we see compassion. Jesus still had compassion even on the cross. The fourth thing we see, my God, why have you forsaken me? When he said this, this shows that the Father and the Son were truly separated. The real anguish of Jesus here, because he is now on his own without God, because God can't look upon sin. And at this point, Christ became the sins of the world. He was the lamb that was being slain, the sacrifice that was being given. But instead of just rolling those sins another year, they were being forgiven. All debt was being paid right there at that moment on the cross. And we see that as there, Jesus takes on all the sins of the world from the beginning to the end of time. Every sin laid upon him. God could not look upon sin. So he had to turn his back on his son. And Christ feels separation from the Father. He knows what it's like to be in anguish. He knows what it's like to suffer. The fifth thing we see, Jesus says, I'm thirsty. He was still human. At this point, he would be very dehydrated. His tongue would be swollen. Like I said, he would be pushing himself up just to get breath, just to speak. Everything is painful. And he feels suffering. And he says, I'm thirsty. I thirst. Sixth, though, we see that Jesus knows what victory is. He says, it is finished. And with that statement, he's saying everything that I've come to accomplish is done. No more has to be done. And he finishes with the seventh statement, and it's this: Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. I give myself to you. True joy. Joy unspeakable and full of glory when we can say, God, I am yours. I give myself to you. Jesus commends his spirit back to the Father, and with that, he draws his last breath. Even on the cross, Christ loved us. Even on the cross, he showed his love for the world. And the redemptive work that was done on the cross is what allows us to know him as Savior, as Lord, and as friend. That's the Christ of the cross. That's the Savior who loves each and every one of us. Regardless of who we are and what we've done, Christ desires a relationship with us. He desires to bring us back to the Father so we can all be together in the end. 3 o'clock he dies. But that isn't where the story ends. So this afternoon I'll post another video and just kind of talking about what happens after he comes off the cross. ultimately, like I said, leading up to Sunday morning when Jesus rises from the grave, beats hell, beats death, and boom! We have hope. Hope everlasting. Hope eternal. May God bless you. Until next time.